I am not making videos about animals like spiders, snakes, worms, bats, and many more. These are just a few of the interesting creatures that the Chinese consume quite normally. The Chinese cuisine, often considered the world's richest cuisine, is truly a culture that can combine unimaginable things into a meal. Well, there must be people wondering why they can't find anything proper to eat, and why these people seem to like insects and bugs. In fact, there is a much deeper and sadder reason behind all of this. I think there is no possibility for people like us to understand this because none of us have had the obligation to feed our families with insects and bugs for lunch. Welcome to the harsh reality. We are in the late 17th century, and the Ottoman Empire has reached its greatest extent, incorporating dozens of countries with a total population of around 30 million, which was a significant number for that time. Meanwhile, in the same period, the estimated population of China was about 130 million. In any era of human history you look at, you'll find that China's population has always been significantly larger than that of other countries, even despite major upheavals. We don't know the exact reason for this, but we can make some educated guesses. China is one of the largest countries in the world with highly fertile lands. Thanks to climatic diversity, agriculture has always played a crucial role, leading to abundant food production and a higher population growth compared to its neighbors. However, while a large population brings advantages, it also poses a constant threat at the top of the country like a sort of democracy. Well managed, it can be a powerful force, but in times of the slightest turmoil, it's a risk that can self-destruct. So, how did the Chinese successfully manage this massive population for thousands of years? The answer is simple: with a strong authoritarian system. In such systems, especially in rural areas, peasants are often seen as mere robots. In Chinese history, we see how production quotas were imposed on peasants, and if they couldn't meet the state-demanded production, they were either punished or had their allotments reduced. This often led to many deaths. Hence, peasants were forced to work tirelessly just to survive. This governing style has been a powerful force throughout the ages, threatening the Chinese people with hunger and compelling them to work and obey. Now you might ask, why did these people accept such an oppressive system? They do not rebel against the government, and this is quite interesting. When we look at the history of China, yes, we see some revolts, but compared to revolutionary uprisings in other countries, they seem relatively shallow. A harsh oppression on peasants has always persisted. Regarding the issue of rebellion, there is an interesting claim, although not scientifically proven. Some researchers argue that the dietary habits of societies are correlated with their propensity for rebellion and war. For example, societies that consume a diet rich in red meat are said to be more prone to aggression and warfare, while agricultural societies that rely more on vegetables and legumes are claimed to have a decreased desire for conflict and rebellion, being more obedient. However, as I mentioned, this is not fully scientifically proven, but looking at history, it seems somewhat logical to me. Now, how do we connect all of this to the present? You might rightly say, thousands of years have passed, technology has advanced, food production has increased. Why are these people still acting as if they are facing scarcity? Well, here we come to an event that has washed away the psychology of the Chinese people and, in my opinion, is an incident that has eroded all ethical and empathetic feelings. A colossal, music, one of the most egoistic individuals in history. Mao Zedong, a leader of the communist forces during the Chinese Civil War in 1921, gained political power and subsequently, after the communists won the war in 1949, established the People's Republic of China and ruled the country until his death in 1976. In 1958, Mao initiated the Great Leap Forward, aiming to abandon the old culture and create a new industrialized China. It may sound good for those who hear it from the outside, but the reality was quite different. For his obsessive ambition for industrialization, Mao established industrial complexes and large conglomerates. The people working in these conglomerates lived inside state-controlled factories, and their only life was centered around working there. Payments were largely made in the form of food, sufficient for their survival. Those who did not want to work would likely lose their place in the factory, leading to dire consequences. Of course, they took this approach to another level by establishing similar slave farming conglomerates to make food payments to this massive workforce. Unbelievable production quotas were implemented. Mao Zedong wanted the people to focus on only two things: industrial production and food production. Anything else, and I mean everything else, had to be erased from the memory of the people. In 1966, under the banner of the Cultural Revolution, Mao initiated a movement to completely sever the ties of the Chinese people with their past. Imagine, we're talking about one of the oldest and most significant ancient civilizations that has literally shaped history with its inventions. Yet, one of their own came forward to erase this memory under the guise of modernization. What did they do? People who engaged in traditional crafts, those who kept any historical book, object, or even the smallest material from those times were sent to labor camps and worked to death. Artisans had their hands cut off, followers of Confucianism and any other belief were killed. During this period, all temples associated with ancient Chinese philosophy were attacked, and many were destroyed, with ancient texts inside them being burned. Can you imagine an operation to erase people's past, beliefs, values, essentially their identity, and this being done from one Chinese person to another? The incredible production quotas, the pressure on people, the culture being destroyed day by day, and a road with an uncertain destination. It's not just overflowing like a cup, but it's as if the cup is filled to the brim and about to spill over. However, this overflow did not come from the Chinese people saying, "Enough, one does not treat another like this," as you might think. Remember, the Chinese don't rebel much. The tipping point came from a very different place, the sparrows. It's 1958, during the period when Mao considered himself a god. Well, this ignorant megalomaniac and his team are drawn to a simple observation: small sparrows are seen eating the grains scattered on the ground. They make a very simple deduction: sparrows eat grains, so if we don't reach our quota, it means these sparrows will also eat the grains in the fields, and we won't meet our target. This is where things explode. An order known as the Kill the Sparrows Decree is sent to the entire country, instructing the extermination of all sparrows in the country. It couldn't be more foolish, right? But it happened, and the now robotized Chinese people did it with great enthusiasm. Millions of birds were massacred, and this event was celebrated as a great success. However, the inhumane slaughter would have terrifying consequences in the following years. The first harvest after the killing of the birds was said to have a slight increase in production, but only a small amount. While Mao and his cabinet believed that there would be even more significant increases in the future, a different problem began to arise. In fact, an event that seems to have jumped out of stories told in the Bible and the Torah started to unfold. Due to the absence of birds, which are natural predators of insects, there was an abnormal increase in insects nationwide. Of course, with the insects reproducing in large numbers, those who fed on them, namely, the rats, also multiplied abnormally and invaded the country. The destruction caused by this is unimaginable, from crops in the fields to products in storage. Insects and rats attacked and consumed everything. Now, desperate, China started importing millions of sparrows from neighboring Russia. But it was too late. Agricultural production collapsed, the breakdown of the food chain began to hit millions of industrial workers like a tsunami. This chain of events started around the time when China had a population of about 800 million people. Mao's regime began to sacrifice rural people to maintain industry, especially as basic food exports from the Russians peaked. However, as I said, this food was brought in more to maintain order in the cities. Contrary to what you might think, whether it's China, America, or any government, they don't really care about protecting their people. Their concern is the love of power and their own ideals, and in adverse times, the first segment to be sacrificed is the people. Especially those with low income levels. Remember this statement, one day, unfortunately, you will remember it. The Chinese government selected villages that couldn't meet their production quotas well and almost completely stopped food aid to these areas. Subsequently, horrific events unfolded. People, before starving to death, consumed the creatures they found in nature. Over time, livestock and natural habitats collapsed. By the way, don't think of this consumption in a pleasant way: hunting, cleaning, cooking, and eating. We are not talking about 3 to 5 people here, we are talking about millions of hungry people fighting for survival. The statements of those who survived the 3 years of this horrific period, when the destruction reached its peak, are beyond comprehension. When people found any living being in nature, they would immediately tear it apart and consume it raw. They ate them because there was no opportunity for cleaning and cooking, otherwise, someone else might see and steal from you, he says. Listen to the survivors. So, when animals were depleted, what do you think happened? People started eating insects, grass, weeds, tree barks, and even mud in sequence. Let's hear more. Well, I'm sure your faces have fallen by now, and you might be thinking, oh God, what a terrible thing, or something like that. But the events haven't reached their peak yet. Years ago, I watched a video about the famine during Mao's era. I specifically searched for that woman's interview, but unfortunately, I couldn't find it. However, since everything she said has been etched into my mind, I'll share it with you. She was a survivor, just like the people you saw earlier, and she owed her survival to her mother, but at a very heavy cost. The interview went something like this. I was a little girl back then, and there was very little food in our village. All my bones were counted, and I couldn't even stand up. My father had succumbed to hunger a few months earlier, and when he lost consciousness and fell to the ground, people tore him apart, boiled and ate him. We had become accustomed to this sight because it had happened many times before. When my mother became too weak to fight hunger, she closed the door of our house, put me in front of her, and placed a knife beside me. She said, I want you to eat me when I die, before the others come. Eat as much as you can. I couldn't bear to listen to her cry, but soon after, she collapsed to the ground and died. It took me some time to grasp the truth, but I knew people would come to our door. So, when my mother's emaciated legs couldn't be seen anymore, I tore off pieces and ate as much as I could. Shortly afterward, unable to see her, neighbors who couldn't wait broke into our house. They tore her apart and ate her right in front of my eyes. What Mao took from us was not only our families but also our humanity. I may not have found the video, but I remember every word she said. This was the peak of the famine, and many similar events are detailed in the book Nizar Taisai, Gravestone, written by the woman. If you want, you can find and read it for more details. Animals, grass, insects, mud, people consumed them one by one. They were exhausted, and now there was nothing left for others to eat. During this great famine lasting 3 years, it is estimated that more than 60 million people died, according to current estimates. Those who died in labor camps or were killed during the Cultural Revolution are not even included in this figure. Imagine, 60 million people, almost the population of Turkey a few years ago, died of hunger. Just think about it. It's hard to fathom. In the following years, due to the deaths of millions and the replenishment of sparrows balancing the ecology again, and with imports made, the famine problem was resolved. Now, some of you may be thinking, how did they let Mao live after these events? Well, you'll be surprised, he lived quite well, reaching the age of 82, and then died of natural causes. Moreover, his party did not collapse. Even today, the party he founded is still in charge of China. I can tell you this much, the mentality remains the same. Yes, maybe they didn't kill sparrows this time, but they underwent a crazy industrial growth. As a result, rivers dried up or were severely polluted, and those waters are no longer suitable for agriculture. Nature always has a balance, and if you disrupt it, you'll experience the consequences. Now, I wonder, what do you think will happen this time? As climate conditions worsen and drought increases, affecting 900 million people due to excessive demand since 2020, what will those people do? Share your thoughts in the comments. As I mentioned earlier, we learned one of the reasons why the Chinese look at everything as food. Of course, there are historical and cultural reasons as well. However, this event is one of the main reasons. But the real question is, as the next famine approaches China step by step, who or what will they see as food then? Thank you for watching the video. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share the videos with your friends. Thanks to all of you for your support. Until next week, take care.